we've done some pretty amazing things together. It all started when we thought to ourselves, there's gotta be a better way to work with data that makes it easier for developers to create modern applications that scale. Then we got to work. We embraced the document model in version 1.0, built an incredible community platform that's seen hundreds of millions of downloads. Then we went even further, removed operational complexity, launched Atlas in the cloud, then whoosh, your ideas really came to life because your vision plus our innovative data platform became a force to be reckoned with. Together, we moved the world forward, turned keystrokes into key milestones, made apps that change the way we work, eat, live, play, move, and communicate. And our foot's still on the gas. We've integrated search, mobile, and visualization across a multi-cloud platform, helping customers everywhere build their tomorrows. Our technology allows over 35,000 customers globally to set a breakneck pace of innovation across nearly every industry. But we're not done yet, and neither are you, because what lies ahead is even more exciting. It holds more promise, more possibility, more, wow, how'd they think of that? Tomorrow, in other words, is even brighter than today. Tomorrow, we help support newer and more awe-inspiring applications. The applications you haven't dreamed up yet, but will, soon. Just imagine what you'll think of that we can help power. Imagine what you'll invent that we can help you build. Given all we've accomplished so far, just imagine what we'll do tomorrow.
Please welcome to the stage, MongoDB Principal Developer Advocate, Karen Huame.
Hi guys, thank you so much. Thank you for coming, Dallas, and welcome to MongoDB.local Dallas. This is our first in-person event here in Dallas in a pretty long time, so we're super thrilled you can make it. Thank you for coming out with us this morning. I'm particularly thrilled to welcome you because I live in Austin, Texas now, but I actually grew up in Rockwall. And when I was little, I moved there. The only thing now I'm going to age myself. The only thing there at the time was a Dairy Queen and a K-Bob Steakhouse. So if you've been there recently, you know that was a long time ago. And then when I was in high school, I moved to Trophy Club, which was brand new at the time. And our big after-school activity was piling in my friend's truck, and we drive out to Flower Mound. And the only thing in Flower Mound at the time was farmlands and the area's only McDonald's. So it's changed a lot. So now I come back to Dallas, I'm like, what happened? So I have a joke, actually. How many Dallasites does it take to change a light bulb? It takes 3 Dallasites to change a light bulb, 1 to change a light bulb, and 2 to go on and on about how they like everything so much better with the other light bulb. So with that, let's give a big thank you, heartfelt thank you to our amazing partner, AWS, who helped us organize this amazing event for you here at the House of Blues. Thank you, AWS. And they're also going to be doing a talk to talk about how well MongoDB and AWS work together seamlessly, serverlessly, securely, in a session this afternoon. So be sure to check that out. We're going to have a packed agenda, lots of sessions both here in this room and in the Cambridge room upstairs over a wide variety of topics. So after each session, if you wouldn't mind, take some time. There's going to be a QR code at the end of each of those sessions. If you could scan that code, leave a couple of, rate it, leave a couple comments if anything falls to mind, because this really helps us sort of curate the content that is most relevant and useful to you. In addition to all of the amazing sessions, we're going to have an expo booth upstairs. Lots of, the expo floor has lots of product booths where you could see about our products. And then if you want any one-on-one time, some consultation, we have Ask the Experts. So please go ahead and make an appointment. You get a one-on-one time, 20 minutes with some of our local MongoDB experts where you could sort of talk about your deployments and your performance and anything that's on your mind. So join us for that. And then if that's not enough, after all of the sessions, after your Ask the Experts, after AWS's session, please stay because at 5 o'clock, continue to network, have some cocktails with us, some light bites. We're going to have a reception upstairs in the expo hall. And then if you have some answers to some trivia questions, we have some prizes for you as well at our developer community booth. So with that, please help me get this started by welcoming to stage MongoDB's Senior Vice President of Products, Andrew Davidson. Thanks, Andrew. Have fun.
Thanks so much, Karen. Wow, folks, I could not be more excited to be with you here today at the House of Blues in Dallas. Honestly, it's a dream come true. I never thought I'd be on a stage like this. And to be with you all in person today, again, after all these years, you know, the bandwidth of conversations that we can have together in these types of conferences, this is why we're here. You are our North Star. You help us figure out where we need to evolve our platform. And we're going to learn so much from you today, and I hope you'll learn from us as well. So let's kick it off. I want to reiterate a big thank you to our partner, AWS, helping us make this possible. Simon will be giving a great talk on serverless application development later today. You know, we've heard from all of you through those challenging Zoom conversations over the last couple of years, throughout the challenges of the pandemic, and now the challenges that continue, the supply chains and the macroeconomic headwinds. We've heard the same thing over and over from all of you. We have become more and more crystal clear aware that a digital-first strategy has become a fundamental imperative. It's been a tough couple of years. Gaming and streaming companies had to deal with orders of magnitude increases in demand overnight. Brick and mortar retailers had to become e-commerce experts on a dime. The supply chain heroes had to keep the machine running, getting us the stuff that we all needed. And time was of the essence. And what we've heard from you all over and over again is that the fastest way to build is to use MongoDB. Developers could experience meaning by shipping faster. Product folks could deliver to the needs of the customers and evolve based on what their customers were telling them. And executives could respond to threats and avoid being disrupted in this critical time. So why is it that MongoDB makes it so easy to move so fast? Well, it's because we're singularly focused from the very beginning. We were obsessed, frankly, with developer productivity. This is the core ethos of our company. It informs every feature we build, every product we build. And if you think about it, where do developers spend most of their time? Well, they spend most of their time wrestling with state, wrestling with data. If you can remove the friction of working with data, you can massively amplify developer productivity, and that allows you to innovate faster. This is critical to your business. If you think about it from the very beginning, MongoDB, this incredible growth engine that we've all seen, was anchored on one very fundamental innovation, and that is the document model. There's other important ones I'll talk about in a moment, but the document model is the most important one because it reflects how developers think and code. This is the modern superset data model, and it's what allows those developers, when they first sit down at the keyboard at their workstation and use MongoDB, to just feel like they can fly, that visceral moment. That's what makes MongoDB so exciting for developers. In those early days, though, it wasn't just the document model. It was also the fact that MongoDB was a distributed system for high availability, for scalability. And the reason that's so important is that in the earliest days of cloud, when infrastructure as a service was just being born, MongoDB democratized those building blocks for developers. So MongoDB rode this wave with the birth of cloud, and then the birth of the mobile revolution with the launch of the smartphone, leading to orders of magnitude more demand from consumers, and MongoDB was there every step of the way. Folks were saying over the years, this is going to be a niche thing. The document model is never going to be general purpose. It's never going to support mission-critical workloads. But you all, developers, you said something different. You went out and built hundreds of thousands of applications on the platform. You are the reason we kept innovating. We added geospatial capabilities early on in the mobile revolution. We added multi-document ACID transactions. Those hundreds of thousands of applications that you all built in the subsequent years, we're interacting with them every day of our lives, every single one of us, even every hour of our lives. Applications you use explicitly and the ones you don't even realize you're using that are behind the scenes. The entire digital economy is touching MongoDB all the time. So we were being pulled by you in all these directions. And eventually we realized, maybe 8 or so years ago, that while it was incredibly powerful to have this developer-oriented data model, we needed to go to the next level. Frankly, this model wasn't going to be enough to compete against subpar models delivered as a service. We needed to deliver that same ability to move as fast as you can think in the data plane to the infrastructure tier. And that's why we went all in and launched MongoDB.Atlas. This has been an inflection point for the company. We launched it 6 years ago. It gives developers that higher level of abstraction, the data and the infrastructure as fast as they can think. The fastest growing part of our business, the vast majority of our revenue, the vast majority of our customers. There's 150,000 people signing up every single month for Atlas today. And these are people who, they expand the entire spectrum from folks building some of the largest workloads in the world all the way down to those solo developers learning to code for the first time and everything in between. Millions of operations per second are being driven across the Atlas fleet. Again, all of us are interfacing with it all the time behind the scenes. And it's got a truly global reach. In 2014, when we had our first conference, we had 1,100 customers. Flash forward to today, we've got over 30 times as many customers in over 100 countries. We've got 10 times as many employees as we had then, and they're in 30 countries. And our customers, I mean, it's just profound. Every use case, every vertical, every industry, everywhere you look around the world, incredible stories. Boots, a 180-year-old pharmacy in the UK, going and powering their digital strategy. Toyota, building their connected car platform on the platform. Q Health, giving us privacy-optimized, proctored COVID tests on a mobile device in the privacy of our own homes so we could travel during the pandemic. And Verizon, building their 5G edge solution on the platform. So many more. Our growth and financial successes over the years have enabled us to invest massively in R&D. We've invested over $1 billion at this point, and just this year alone, we're going to invest more than we invested in the first 10 years of the company's history. And I always tell my team, it is truly rare to be part of a company that thinks this way and it operates this way. And let me tell you why. I tell them, mission-critical data software is slow-moving. This is not a flash-in-the-pan type of company. This is critical connective tissue powering the back of the global economy. And we need to be able to make lots of concurrent innovation leaps. We need to do them all at the same time, and each of them needs to iterate across multiple years. And we have to do all of that while continuing to invest in the core and while ensuring that it all comes together elegantly and wonderfully for our end customer, the developer. It's hard to do that. It's hard to operate that way. It requires a company DNA that's comfortable disrupting itself. And it's a DNA that I think we are lucky to have, and I think it's a DNA that we share with many of you, such innovative companies represented here today. And the good news is we're just getting started. Our mission is to empower innovators to create, transform, and disrupt industries by unleashing the power of software and data. This is informed by what we've seen over the last decades. Relational databases simply have too many limitations. They're inflexible. They don't handle the scale needs of today. Their costs are problematic to deal with. If you're a company like Foursquare with 100 million global points of interest, you need a scalable, flexible data model. If you're a company like Harness, building an AI-enriched DevOps solution that's rapidly growing, you need that same kind of model. If you think about relational databases, they came out of a very different time in computing. When they were being born, the key cost bottleneck in computing in the 1970s was the cost of storage. At that time, you could throw a bunch of people at the problem. Storage was so expensive. If you flash forward to today and I ask you, what's the key cost bottleneck in computing today? I would argue it's developers' minds. And so we need something different. Now, what has continued to happen is people layer in niche databases to augment the limitations of the relational model. They might throw in a key value store on the side for high availability and scalability. All of a sudden, they've given up queryability. So then they have to throw in a search engine, yet another system. All of a sudden, they're sprawled across 3 systems. They got to bring in a caching layer to make it fast and performant. Think about what this leads to. Your developer experience now is sprawled across 4 or more different endpoints, different APIs, different query languages. You're paying the synchronization tax, all the plumbing, all the ETL, and there's more systems in the mix than just those 4. This is a brittle system. It's waking you up in the middle of the night when those ETL jobs fail. And it's a nightmare to operationalize. Each system requires bespoke governance, mindsets, systemization. We all have a chart like this. I think we're all proud of it. It's our castle. We built this up. But let's take some distance from it for a moment and ask ourselves, is this really allowing us to innovate? We all understand how we got here, but is there another way? We believe the market fundamentally needs something different. What the market needs is a platform for innovation. The challenges of working around the limitations of relational databases, the massive complexity of bolting on all these other systems. What you need in a modern data platform, we believe, can be summed up in 3 key tenets. The first is an elegant developer experience. This should be anchored in a modern data model that reflects how developers think and code. The second is broad workload support. You should be able to drive the vast majority of the needs for the vast majority of your applications, all through a consistent platform with a standard interface, that wonderful developer interface we just spoke about. And finally, it should be available on a global foundation for scale that lets you go anywhere in the world when you need to on any cloud provider. And that's why we conceptualize Atlas as the developer data platform. It all starts with the document model. The document model is the superset of data models. Key value store is basically a document with a single index. Relational is essentially a flat document. There's no reason document can't be the be-all, end-all model. But behind that elegant document interface, you should be able to drive the vast majority of the workloads that you need, starting with the operational transactional, the bread and butter application use cases, expanding into search. Search is everywhere now. It should be part of the same system. Expanding into application-driven analytics and lifecycle analytics. And it should be possible to build modern applications using all the popular form factors to do so. If you're building truly globally distributed or multi-region use cases, it should be out of the box easy. If you're building mobile or device-centric use cases, it should be there. And if you're building serverless or event-driven use cases, it should also be there. And this should be available on a secure, elastic, multi-cloud foundation. I think this model is fantastic for a builder. If I'm a 2-pizza team trying to build an application, awesome, right? This gives me what I want. I can have my cake and eat it too. But let's zoom out for a second. What about if I want to enable dozens to hundreds of 2-pizza teams, dozens to hundreds of microservice and application teams? That's where this model also really shines because I can platformatize this. My platform engineers can go in and deliver a consistent experience for all those teams to have their own app dev self-service experience, and I can have standardization across the whole mix of every single application. That's a game changer at an enterprise level, at a platform engineering level. What I would describe it as is you want to build your own app dev assembly line, and that concept came to me actually from a customer. I remember early on in the Atlas journey, I was speaking to a global gaming customer, and they had experienced an outage in a non-production environment. And I said to the individual, at least it wasn't a production environment. And he goes, you don't understand. This was an outage of our app dev assembly line. This is a tier 1 business outage. We're like Tesla if their assembly line is down, it's a fundamental business problem. So it hit me in that moment. What we're empowering here is you're all building that app dev assembly line. You need to do that on top of a platform built for that mindset. You need to do that in order to allow you to operate as a software company and continuously ratchet forward your software. Operating as a software company is what all of us are aspiring to do. And speaking of a company that operates as a software company, one of the most innovative companies in the world, a company that was critical in the foundational innovations with integrated circuits and semiconductors and networking, a company that now enables 5G in our pockets, and one of the most data-driven companies in the world. I'd like to invite to the stage the AVP of Data Insights from the Chief Data Office of AT&T, Prince Paulraj.
How are you?
Good to see you, man.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm going to talk about today from AT&T a new use case. How we are using MongoDB to advance our AI. So the use case that I'm going to talk about is the fraud, right? How we are compacting the fraud and keeping the H2O feature store as our storage layer, and then doing this in real-time monitoring, right? Using one of our product. So let's get into this. So to know a little bit of a journey here, you can look at here the last 6 years. Like everyone else, it's $1 billion industry problem, right? Stopping the fraud. And all the time you see, even in early 2017, we started with no rules, right? Just get the data and try to compact the fraud. Then we started putting some rules in place. And using rules, we correlate the data and trying to stop the fraud. Then in 2019, we got into the machine learning where we can use the AI to combat the fraud. So that gave us a lot of significant fraud stops. Then the journey grows. Now we have 50+ machine learning model running in production that's combating the fraud, right? So when I talk about the volume of the data, it's more than 10 million transactions or events per day, right? Sometimes even it will be 20 million, 30 million, right? There is always a spike on a busy days. So you could look at this 6 years of a journey. We kept MongoDB as one of our database right from the day one, because the data is changing, data volume is increasing, fraudsters are coming with a new scheme of things. The data type is changing all the time, right? And whether it's a near real-time data or a streaming data, it's all a lot of challenges for us. From the day one, MongoDB being the document model, I love that data developer platform that Andrew mentioned. That's been the great journey for us. The last 6 years, MongoDB is with us in this journey and being our central repository for handling all this sort of a machine learning model, how we can score it in real time. So this one is kind of a busy slide, but I would take you through 3 sections. You can look at the left section, right? So that's where our data collection happens. This data collection comes all around, right? From a retail store, or you go to AT&T.com, or you talk to our customer care. It's coming from everywhere. And we have a lot of sub-transactions, I would say. Either customers logging into AT&T.com, or they are adding the products in the cart to buy, or when they do a checkout shipment, and it goes along, right? So there are multiple transactions happens in the data collection standpoint. So we have an internal data as well as the external data that's coming in, right? The frequency, like I said, something is batch, something is near real time, something is streaming. So we got to handle all this data volume or the pipelines into our feature store. You see that being the central point, that's exactly where we apply all our machine learning model in the middle section, right? So once we apply all these models and the outcome comes out, so we want to take action. So that's our third section. Our business fraud analysts want to take some action if we find some transactions, fraudulent transaction. And you can see this whole picture again across 3 sections, MongoDB playing a good role, right? That being the data-centric for us. It's kind of very interesting because, like I said, it all needs to happen in 200 milliseconds, right? The frauds are really fast, so we have to stop the fraud. So the only way we can do is be fast, apply these models and machine learning models, and take action. So it's not easy, right? It's a cool picture of what I showed you, but there is a lot of data challenges. There is a lot of operational challenges, right? If I talk about the data challenges, we have 28 terabytes of data that's sitting in the journey of what we have done so far, right? More than 600 collections in place. And even our indexed, the collection size is 2 terabytes. There are 2 million documents an hour it's streaming into our platform. So it's not easy, right? Obviously, this pushed to an edge where, okay, let's go to the cloud. And we went to the Atlas, the data developer platform, right? We love that platform, but it's the operational challenges comes along with it while we are trying to migrate the stuff, right? Because we have to handle the live streaming of all these transactions and stop fraud. At the same time, we have to copy all the data into the cloud where we are building into the kind of repository in Atlas. So, and also remember that this fraud platform for AT&T, it has to run 24/7, 365 days, and it has a sub-seconds, kind of an SLA that we have with our downstream systems. So it has to work in that manner, right? So doing this migration and modernizing our technology and compacting fraud was really a big challenge, right? So we had a lot of upstream systems. They are pushing the data to us, and also there are downstream systems that consume the data from us. So we have to be the central point there and take care of the upstream and the downstream in a real time. That was also a bit of a challenge. After we go through all these pain points, and here's the good outcomes and benefits that I like to talk about. The Atlas provides us a great scalability, right? It's elastically scalable, right? And even some of the difficult situations for us, like I don't say it's a difficult situation, it's a good situation, where our sales is a high, it's a really peak during iconic launch or holiday sessions. During that time, the volume of data is increasing, right? And now Atlas, it gives the scalability functionality for us, right? So it takes care of all the high availability, the security, and the compliance, and even it's giving us suggestions, auto-indexing and auto-scaling, and all those good suggestions is really great. So we are able to scale up and scale down based on the volume of the data that we receive, right? Remember one thing, and AT&T, our focus is customer-centric, customer-focused, and we want to stop fraud as much as we can, and we can protect our customers not to be victimized in those sort of things. And so, thanks for MongoDB taking care of all this infrastructure, the managed services, all these sort of data and operational challenges, so we can be just focused on our business goal and how we can stop fraud. Thank you.
That was awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, Prince. AT&T, amazing. This is the fun bit where I get to start talking to you about all the new stuff that we've been working on. So I'm going to go through each of those 3 key tenets of our developer data platform, starting with the elegant developer experience. There's so much we're doing here, and I'm not going to be able to go into depth on all of it. Things like the wonderful local remote developer experiences that we're powering with the Atlas CLI, or our new programming language communities, new drivers that are always coming online. And one that's really exciting that I just wanted to tell you a story about is the Atlas Data API. So the Atlas Data API is allowing us to reach audiences that we weren't reaching before. A couple weeks after the GA of the Data API, a member of the Roblox community built a connector for MongoDB.Atlas. And if anyone in the room has kids, you might be aware that your kids might be learning to code on this game called Roblox. It's that popular. People are actually doing this. And the fact that they can use MongoDB.Atlas from that context, I just think it's a great story. And to me, it's a sign of what we're doing, which is ubiquity. We understand that this is a movement. This is a multi-decade shift into a new paradigm, a new model. And so we need to be enabling those developers of tomorrow. That's why we reach new communities. That's why we invest in MongoDB for Academia and MongoDB University and so many other scenarios. This is enabling you to hire these folks in 10 years. This is going to be the future. But today, I want to double-click into a specific topic, serverless. We've all seen this move to higher levels of abstraction over time. We started with physical servers and got to see the wonderful innovation that took us into virtualization and cloud instances from there, and the increased portability and economics that came from the containerization. And from there, all the way up to the highest level of abstraction in serverless, where it became centered on events and function calls. And this model is just going to continue. It's an endless trend. We all have seen this shift over the industry over time. It gets easier to use, lower cognitive load over time, inevitable. And this model has been brought to the data tier as well, of course. But serverless databases have left developers wanting more. If you look at most of the ones on the market today that are popular, the existing options have a bunch of critical limitations. Usually, they offer a very limited subset of functionality that you need for general purpose applications. Usually, they're a key value store without strongly consistent secondary indexes. Usually, they have problems with scaling, trade-offs. Either you pay when your workload goes to 0, or you pay a cold start delay. And they tend to have problems with runaway bills. Typically, people really struggle because of that linear growth of the cost as the workload intensity grows. And they tend to lock you in, whether to a particular provider context or a particular deployment model. That's why we were so excited to announce the general availability of Atlas serverless instances, giving developers what they need, a higher level of abstraction, deployment in a couple of seconds, not having to think about capacity planning or compute capacity, or any of those details, and just straight off to the races. A serverless database without the compromises. Let's talk about that for a moment. We give you in Atlas Serverless the full power of MongoDB. That's multi-document ACID transactions, aggregations, secondary indexes, all consistent. No scaling trade-offs. Your workload drops to 0, your bill goes to 0, except for the cost of storage. When your workload comes back online, no cold start delay. And we build in usage-based daily discounts up to 90% off for read processing units so that your cost curve is healthy. And finally, we're not locking you into a deployment model. If you get to the point where you would benefit more from Atlas dedicated clusters, you can move to them easily. And of course, Atlas Serverless is available on every major cloud provider. So let's transition now to the second tenet of our developer data platform, broad workload support. Remember, we believe you should be able to do the vast majority of the use cases for the vast majority of your applications in a single consistent platform accessible from a single unified interface. To bring this concept to life, we thought it'd be kind of fun if we did a little bit of a thought experiment. Let's imagine that we all together have gone out to some Silicon Valley venture capitalists, and we all together are going to go build our great idea. And let's say we together are going to call this idea Leafy. It's going to be our hypothetical marketplace for houseplants. There's going to be buyers and sellers of houseplants. This is going to be a game-changing disruption. We're going to show the world what it's been missing without having had a houseplant disruptor before. We're all doing this together. And then, of course, the third key constituent to think about is us, Leafy Corp. We're doing this. We're building this together. Well, let's talk about what this application is going to look like and feel like, and all the key constituent parts that are going to make this incredible innovation a possibility. The first is the buyer experience. What does the buyer experience of an application like this look like? We all know that the front door of any e-commerce application, frankly, increasingly the front door of every application, is powered by search. And let's be honest, traditionally, it's been pretty doggone difficult to bring search into these applications. You had to synchronize data out of your transactional store into a whole separate search engine. You had to deal with all that continuous ETL, plumbing. It could, again, break in the middle of the night. You're paying a 20 to 30% tax on your team just to do all this. And maybe more importantly, well, I think for every team that's sophisticated enough to do this, there's 10 teams that haven't been able to bring the power of search to their applications because they just couldn't do this, didn't have that activation energy. That's why we were so excited to announce Atlas Search. It's the easiest way to bring relevance, rich, fast search experiences to your applications. Atlas Search is accessible through the same query interface, the same front door, as the rest of the MongoDB Query API. And there's so much that we've been investing ever since our general availability. A couple of years ago, we've added autocomplete, synonyms, stored source fields, cross-collection search, embedded documents and array support. In other words, support for search of the rich structure of MongoDB. And more recently, we launched the general availability with MongoDB 6.0 of facets powered by Atlas Search. These are those classic application experiences. Think about an e-commerce catalog, any catalog use case where you can quickly filter by taxonomy. You can quickly see how many items are in each category. It should be easy for a developer to build this into their application. Everyone should be able to do it. Facets make that 100 times faster and easy to build in Atlas Search today. Another great example, more like this. It should be easy for developers to put those classic experiences in where you recommend things like people who bought this also bought that, or people going to this destination might be interested in this. More like this is a classic search use case, and it should be easy, and it's there today in Atlas Search. So if Atlas Search and search in general has become the front door of essentially every application today, well then, I think the main pane of glass that we're interfacing through to get to all these applications is, of course, mobile and devices, whether it's in our pocket or a device or a kiosk at an airport or anything in between. And when it comes to mobile and devices, the good news is it has never been easier to build a mobile application powered by MongoDB. There's three main ways to do it. You can build on a classic stack, like a MERN backend API tier, Node.js community, or on .NET stacks, or on Java Spring Boot stacks, and a variety of others. Or you can take advantage of our fully managed API services, part of the Atlas App Services. We offer a data API and a GraphQL API, taking on some of that heavy lifting for you. Or finally, you can take advantage of the most elegant, modern solution in the industry with Atlas Device Sync. In the paradigm of Atlas Device Sync, a mobile developer on the client device actually reads and writes locally to the Realm mobile database SDKs. They present an elegant live object model to the mobile developer, and Atlas Device Sync handles all the heavy lifting of bidirectionally syncing that data back up into the mothership in MongoDB Atlas. This is extremely powerful because it obviates the need for you to worry about all the plumbing and all the network error handling, and it just allows you to focus on your customer experience. In Leafy, the buyer and seller experience, of course that's going to be mobile first. Of course people are buying and selling mobile applications on the go. That's the future. We're super excited to announce that we're continuing to invest in Device Sync. Earlier this year, we launched the general availability of Flexible Sync. Flexible Sync makes it possible to intuitively describe exactly what goes to each device, personalize that data for a particular person or store location. It should be easy for a role. You should be able to synchronize based on a query. We also launched into preview asymmetric sync. This is sync that's one way in nature. Think about it as ingestion-oriented, like IoT. You could have a device that's streaming data up to MongoDB.Atlas. By device sync is pulling it in. In Atlas, it could be optionally stored in a MongoDB time series collection. From there, it could optionally go into tiering with Atlas Online Archive for object storage economics, for example. And finally, we were excited to announce earlier this year new SDKs for next-generation cross-platform device-oriented use cases, Kotlin and Flutter. Super popular frameworks, now with SDKs. So, going back to the Leafy application for a second, let's look at the buyer view again. There's so many classic experiences in these use cases, like how many people are looking at this listing right now, or how many items sold recently, or in the seller view, which listings sold for which amounts at which time, et cetera. All of this needs to be super fast in real time. We call this application-driven analytics, or real-time analytics. Now, you might think, okay, I should go bolt on a bunch of special purpose solutions to do this kind of thing again. This theme of, I can go do that, but do I really need to? If you think about MongoDB from the very beginning, having the power of secondary indexes, the power of aggregations, you can drive the vast majority of these use cases right out of your developer data platform. But we continue to invest here. In MongoDB 5.0, we added window functions. In 6.0, we added new accumulators and operators. Think $top, $bottom, et cetera. And of course, we have Atlas Analytics nodes. These give you the power of workload isolation. You can have special replicas that take on your analytical workload so that they don't interrupt your operational transactional workload. Super easy to configure out of the box. And we were super excited to just recently announce that Atlas Analytics nodes can now be asymmetrically scaled compared to the rest of the cluster. You can independently scale them if your analytic workload rises and your operational doesn't, or vice versa, easily configured in Atlas. But we realized there's so much more we could be doing. Classic app-driven analytics use cases typically involve combining data from multiple sources or multiple collections. In MongoDB, we call this $lookup. And we realized with MongoDB 6.0, we can rewrite the query processing engine for $lookup and make these an order of magnitude faster. So we did it. We also realized one of the things holding back $lookup over the years was they didn't fully support sharded collections. Nobody wants that. That gives anxiety about adopting a feature. What if I'm going to need it sharded someday? We removed that by adding support for $lookup and $graph lookup and sharded collections fully there in 6.0. But when we reviewed the problem space of application-driven analytics, we thought there's more that we can do. One thing that we're really excited to be announced coming soon, not here yet, but coming soon, we're working on it hard now, is column store indexes coming to MongoDB. We're going to do this in a way that's going to be native to the document model, native to embedded documents, arrays, polymorphic data. This is going to enable much faster aggregations on index fields for large range scans of collections, coming later this year or early next year. So, let's go back to the seller dashboard for a second. Leafy, we're in our application. Because Leafy is so disruptive, I mean, houseplants are a really big deal. Because people all over the world are getting excited by this phenomenon, it is becoming a material portion of world GDP, arbitrage traders are starting to get involved. Financial engineers are building commoditized houseplant obligations. This is getting out of control. What do people need? They need real-time data feeds, time series data. That's why we launched into MongoDB 5.0 time series collections. We continue to invest here. Over the last year, we've added sharding support, multi-delete, densification and gap filling. You got a blip in a sensor? Query should still run. With 6.0, geo-indexing, expanded secondary indexing support, faster read performance. And we're going to keep investing here. A great example of a customer using it is JB Hunt. JB Hunt is one of the heroes of the supply chain, behind the scenes, getting us what we needed through the challenges of the pandemic. Donovan from JB Hunt is going to be giving a great talk on this later today. So, in summary, MongoDB.Atlas gives us a unified platform for application-driven analytics, born on the foundation of rich document model, rich secondary indexes, powerful aggregations, augmented with window functions, augmented with time series collections, faster dollar lookup, analytics nodes, and column store indexes coming soon. Okay, returning to Leafy for a moment, we've talked about the application use cases for the buyers and sellers. That's fantastic. What about us? We're all Leafy Corp. We need to think about our own ability to operate the business efficiently. How are we going to continue to evolve and enable every one of our key stakeholders? The data is born in the application. The application data where it's born lives in Atlas, great. But there's all those business analysts who need to understand trends in the business. There's the data scientists who need to build those models that we're going to want to operationalize back into the application to recommend particular house plans to particular kinds of folks. And there's the data engineers who need to plumb that data around, ETL, ELT, all that. Well, if you think about doing this, classic use cases are going to come about. They're going to want to embed beautiful dashboards. They could do this with Atlas charts, for example. Or they're going to want to use their popular single panes for this, like Tableau or Power BI. That's great. But doing it typically involves a fair amount of heavy lifting. Traditionally, you take the data from your transactional store. You'd have to pull it downstream, right? The data engineers do all this munging of the data. It's brittle. And then it comes all the way down to the bottom tier where business analysts and data scientists can add value. And I believe that this is a big problem, not only because it's slow and the data is far removed from where the application data is born, but it reflects an organizational problem in our industry. It suggests to me that data teams are often too siloed away from where the data can be put to use in the application. That means that you're not able to build the power of machine learning into your applications. That means that you're not able to operationalize the insights and build software on top of software. It's not just about people looking at dashboards. We need to enable way more than that. So we believe that there's fundamentally a better way to do this. I'm very excited to welcome to the stage the man, the legend, the voice of the MongoDB podcast, Michael Lin, developer advocate at MongoDB, to show you in more detail.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Andrew. I'm so excited to be here. There's a lot of excitement. Everybody's so excited. I just want to make sure we're all set because I'm going to do some showing, not just telling. So let's see here. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's great when a demo works, right? Awesome. Well, once again, thank you, Andrew, and thank you all for being here. I am so excited to hit the mark and talk to you about some amazing features released in MongoDB Atlas. Now, Andrew talked about Leafy Corp, international company, allowing users to buy and sell plants to and from each other. Now, they're going to want to maintain a real-time dashboard. Who doesn't want a real-time dashboard? And as an international company, they're going to need to incorporate data not only from their production applications, running in Atlas, of course, but also from external sources. As an international company, they're going to want to incorporate things like foreign exchange rates. Fortunately, what I get to show you today, data federation, is going to make that simple. I'm going to show you how. So let's take a look. Data federation is found right inside the Atlas GUI on the left, on the side menu there. And I'm going to show you largely what we're talking about today in the GUI, but I realize that as data scientists, as engineers working in Atlas, you're most likely going to maybe use the GUI for a bit and then use APIs and configuration as code. And I want to assure you that while it's entirely possible to do that, it makes for a much less compelling demo. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to demonstrate today in the GUI. So I'll begin by tapping Data Federation, and then we'll get started. Now, Data Federation is going to, at a high level, let you create virtual MongoDB instances. These are populated by virtual databases containing virtual collections. That's a lot of virtual, right? I'm going to explain what I mean there. It's an abstraction layer that's going to enable you to treat all of your data, whether it be native to Atlas or external, with one consistent API. I'm going to make that simple. Let's start. I'm going to tap Create Federated Database, and I'm going to change the name so that it's a little bit more logical for our company. We're dealing with Leafy Corp, so let's call it Leafy Lake. And then I'm going to add a data source. Okay? Now, the first place we need to get data for our real-time dashboard is from the Atlas cluster. That's where our production data lives. So I'll tap that, and I'll choose my cluster. Here I'm going to see all of the databases that are available on that cluster. LeafyDB is the primary. Let's add that. And then I'm going to rename the virtual database. I'll call it LeafyDB. Okay? And then I'll rename the virtual collection. The first place we're going to start to look for data is in our sellers. We want to address our sellers in our real-time dashboard. So next, I'm going to drag the reference from my live production data into my virtual federated instance. Now, notice I'm not copying data. That would be a hassle, right? Copying all of that data over. We'd be limited by physics. I'm just configuring data federation to reference the live production data when a query comes into our federated instance. Now, the next place we need to look for data, like I mentioned before, is external. It's that foreign exchange rates. We need to incorporate those into our real-time dashboard. How do we do that? Let's create a virtual collection to represent that. I'll name this live FX rates. And once again, I'm going to need to add a data source. Now, I've already shown you how to attach and present files in your Atlas cluster. There are two additional external data sources. The first is S3. S3 is going to allow you to present files stored in Amazon's S3 object store. So imagine JSON, BSON, S3, even highly compressed files in Parquet, presented right alongside your live data as a virtual collection. But that's not even the coolest thing. That's pretty cool, but the coolest thing, I think, is the HTTP option. Okay? This is going to allow you to fetch a file from a web server. Okay, so when I say it that simply, fetch a file from a web server, it's not really mind-blowing, right? But when I say JSON, CSV, TSV, even those highly compressed formats, presented at the end of an API, end of a URL, right alongside your other data. I'm going to show you. It's probably going to make more sense if I show you an example. Let's create an HTTP data source. I'll call this live FX rates, and I'm going to need an API. Now, Leafy Corp have subscribed to livebizdata.de. This is a company that, among other things, provide an API so that you can access foreign exchange rates. They've given me an API URL and a key, which I'll paste in. I'll click Next. And, oop, there we go. Let me drag this over into my federated instance, and then I'm going to save that. Now, despite better judgment, I've been told to run this demo from the GUI, but I'm going to open a shell. I know you guys want to see some action here. I'm going to open a shell, which, if you're not familiar with the MongoDB shell, it's a wonderful tool. It's really nothing more than a Node.js instance configured to listen to code as I type it and then display the results. And I'm doing this to show you that what I've just done is integrated at the very core of Atlas. Everything, all of the capabilities that I'm about to show you are available at all layers of the stack, every SDK, every API. So I'm going to go to the shell, and I'm going to paste in my authentication. I'll log into my data federation instance, and here I am in Leafy Lake in my LeafyDB. Let's take a look at the collections that I just created. I've got two, right? Let's take a look first at the sellers collection. I'll do a find one. This is the primary document for sellers. Here you see Elizabeth Moyo. She's a plant seller. She's based in Zimbabwe, so she uses the Zimbabwean dollar. The currency code for that is ZWL. And I mention that because we're going to show you something. I want you to keep your eye on this. But it also shows the plants that she sells, the quantities, and the prices available. Here comes the magic. Now, I'm going to show you the second collection that we created, the virtual collection. Remember that live FX rates is a virtual collection on top of an API. There's the data. So I did a find one, and these are currency codes. They're being displayed as a MongoDB document, fields. Each field has a different currency code. Now, if I were to be writing a real-time dashboard and I want to do computations against those codes, I'd probably have to do some magic to pluck out those codes and incorporate them in calculations, right? Not the best, not the best. But I want to show you before I move on that this is actually pulling data from an API. So if I do it one more time, take a look at that ZWL that Elizabeth Moyo is using. It's 589 now. If I do it again, Sure enough, it's changing. And that's because this virtual collection is on top of an API call. So it's real-time calling, just as if it were an API, but treated as a MongoDB document. Now, like I said, I think it's great that I get that document and that I have those fields, but I don't want to have to pull those codes out manually. I'd rather have this document reshaped. Fortunately, Data Federation has a solution for you. What if you could apply a view on top of this virtual collection? A view. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to jump back to the GUI, and I'm going to create a view. I'll click Add View next to our live FX rates, and I'll name this view FX Table because it is tabular data. And here I'm going to paste in some aggregation pipeline, some code that's going to reshape this document. Don't bother trying to read it. It's probably too small for you to see. You'll see the slides after this if you're really interested. But I want to save this, and I want to jump back to the shell to show you what I've just done. I'm going to show my collections. OK, now I have 3, and one of them is marked as a view. FX Table is a view. Let's take a look at it. Now I'm going to do a find instead of a find one. I'm going to look at all of the data in that collection. And there you have it. The document's been reshaped. So I've done a find on it, and now I get 1 currency per document. So much easier for me to do a find, pluck that currency code out, pluck the value out, do a dollar lookup from other sources. So much easier to work with. And look, it is still changing. So rather than try and explain exactly what that aggregation code did, I think I'm going to try and explain visually. Here's the plant document we talked about earlier. It's got a currency code. I'm going to pull that currency code out. I'm going to do a dollar lookup against that FX Table virtual collection that I created, against the view, which is really on top of a virtual collection, on top of an API call. And then I'm going to extract the exchange rate, and I'm going to go back and insert that. And this is all done in the aggregation code. Insert it into the seller doc, the plant doc. Then I'm going to calculate the dollar price, dividing the exchange rate against the plant price. Then I could do some interesting things, like I can group by plant and show the average, the min, the max, even the total stock count on those plants that we're selling. We're basically doing all of the hard work, creating that dashboard for you. And if I were to look at this as code, I would write something like this. I'd establish an FX rate, and then I'd set the dollar price. And all of this is great, and you probably can follow it along if you really tried. Here's the results. But what if you wanted to take that and materialize that view, provide it back to your production database, take it from that virtual collection and use it in your cluster? You could do that simply by appending a dollar out or a dollar merge to that aggregation pipeline. Materialized views. Pretty powerful. But I noticed that as I was typing some of the aggregation code, maybe some of you looked away, checked your phone. It's OK. I mean, I hear it all the time. Like, my data analysts are not MongoDB experts. Maybe they don't understand every operator in the aggregation pipeline, and that's fine. But if we ask ourselves, what do our data analysts, what do our data scientists work in, day out? Anybody? SQL. SQL. So what if I told you the second thing I wanted to show you, the second big thing I wanted to show you today involved SQL? What if I could define a string of SQL like this? We're all familiar with that as data analysts, doing a select, sum, unwind. And what if I could pass it to Atlas using a helper function like this? SQL. SQL at every layer of the stack. All APIs, all SDKs, all products that previously had integrations with MongoDB. If it can access MongoDB, it can access this capability. SQL in the shell. So data analysts using Tableau, be familiar with this. Data scientists using Jupyter Notebooks. Back office staff using Excel, ODBC, JDBC. Business analysts using any tool that accesses SQL. All integrations, all tools, and all apps now have access to this capability. And I'm so excited to see what you all build with this. Now, before I bring Andrew back out, a shameless plug. As Andrew mentioned, I am the voice of the MongoDB podcast, And I would love to invite you to listen wherever you listen to podcasts. The MongoDB podcast hosts interviews with folks like yourself. We talk about product innovations, we talk about software development, and all things related to data and MongoDB. I hope you join me, I hope you listen, and with that, Andrew?
Thanks.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks so much, Mike. So in summary, what Mike really showed us there was the developer wearing the hat of the data engineer. Think about that. Taking data from disparate sources and pulling that data into the Atlas cluster where it can be operationalized in the applications. Well, I'll tell you, what we're really doing here is serving the entire data lifecycle. With Atlas Data Lake, the power of object storage economics, data tiering, and powering Atlas Online Archive as well. With data federation, enabling you to query from multiple disparate data sources. And with Atlas Charts, enabling you to embed your applications, embed beautiful visualizations into your applications, and build those wonderful dashboards and embedded use cases. So, in summary, serving the entire data lifecycle. If you think about the Leafy application for a moment, this application, it provides that amazing end user experience, that delightful dopamine rush of, I love using this. That same experience that came about when the developer first used MongoDB. That's so important because building this type of application means you have to be operationally building software this way. I mentioned it before, but I didn't talk about all the key pieces. You have to enable your two-pizza team to have embedded product designers and to continuously obsess over that customer experience. The only way any of that is possible is as if you're not spending all your time in all the plumbing beneath the sea. So, Leafy, like all businesses, has to think a heck of a lot about their most sensitive workloads, about security. Security is a complicated topic, and we've seen so many incredible companies built over the years that are in the security space, built on MongoDB. A great example of one of them, a member of the MongoDB for Startups program, is Vanta. Let's hear their story.
My name is Robbie Ostro. I've been at Vanta for 3.5 years now. I was the first employee, first engineer, and now I am the engineering manager on the platform team. Vanta is about automated security and compliance. At the end of the day, historically, how security has worked is that a company will get a piece of paper once a year, then an auditor looks at and says, you guys seem secure, that's great. We check all the same stuff that an auditor would check, but instead of checking 1% of stuff once a year, we check 100% of stuff once an hour. And so we're trying to codify every little bit of security knowledge that not everybody might know and allow you to apply it to any system, ensuring that you're always following best practices. The most important thing to us is being able to iterate quickly, both on the number of features and on the number of integrations that we build. And MongoDB has been really instrumental in allowing us to develop quickly, build quickly, and ensure that we ship quickly without any downtime. We originally chose MongoDB because it was a perfect tool with which we could prototype. But as we grew, we realized it was also the perfect tool that was able to scale with us. One thing that MongoDB for Startups helped us with was actually sending us a consultant who was able to help optimize the way we were using MongoDB and giving us a report with excellent advice across the board. We still refer to that report all the time. One awesome thing about MongoDB Atlas is it has a feature called VPC peering, which allows us to take our VPC, communicate with our database cluster while not exposing any extra cruft to the world.
One key benefit is MongoDB's API abstractions tend to feel like JavaScript and JSON objects, and we really enjoy trying to make our entire stack feel and look like TypeScript. So MongoDB cosmetically, aesthetically, and even programmatically feels like working with JavaScript the whole way down. I really appreciate that MongoDB Atlas allows for fine-grained roles. Using AWS IAM permissions, I'm particularly excited that MongoDB Compass now also supports authenticated Compass using AWS IAM roles. So we can now leverage all of our SSO work on AWS for fine-grained access to MongoDB.
Whenever we make changes or whenever we need to think about how we want to model our information, MongoDB has the flexibility to let us make changes on the fly and to speed up our development process.
Here at Vanta, we're securing the internet and making sure that the incentives are aligned such that everybody wants to do so. We're hiring quickly and looking for great new engineers, so give us a call if you're interested.
Awesome. Vanta, securing the internet. I love that framing. If you don't mind, I'd love to give you a little bit of a refresher on this topic. Fundamental parts of securing the internet are related to encryption. And encryption can be kind of an overwhelming topic, as can the overall security topic. So I wanted to share with you some of my own journey on this. My own mentor for security always told me, you can think about security through sort of two fundamental parts. There's baselines that we all do together that are just non-negotiable. Think about compliance standards. Those are ratcheting up over time as an industry. And then there's going above and beyond. That's where real security beyond that baseline can be found. Now, let's do a refresher on the baseline. When it comes to encryption, there's traditionally been two main areas to talk about. Encryption over the wire, encryption in transit, and encryption at rest. Over the wire, we talk about this as TLS network encryption. This used to be called SSL network encryption, et cetera. At rest, you can imagine this being a storage media encryption. This could be an encrypted file system, or it could be, for example, MongoDB's encrypted storage engine. When it comes to security, it's important not to sweep things under the rug, however. And if we look at this model, this is just a baseline for 2022. If anyone is not doing this today, you got a problem. And those of you who are self-managing, you know how hard this is. Configuring TLS certificates, all that is very challenging. Since this is non-negotiable baseline 2022, that's why Atlas doesn't allow you to disable any of this kind of stuff. It's all handled for you out of the box. But if we look at it, there are some gaps in this model, gaps that are relevant to the most sensitive workloads. And that's important because we need to be able to ensure that the full spectrum, even the most sensitive workloads, can truly be deployed in the cloud. So let's look at how this works. Typically, you have users interfacing through a client application, interfacing then to the database and the storage underneath that. Even if you have encryption at rest, typically what you're doing is decrypting your data in memory inside the database. Just the reality is that's the only way the database can do its job, perform the queries. Now, there's some problems with this, some threats to consider. You could have malware on the device. You could have a bad actor inside the service provider. Or you could have a CPU side channel attack. We've seen a couple of those over the years, et cetera. Is there another way? Well, in 2019, we launched client-side field-level encryption, which basically encrypted the data in the application before it goes into the database. This protects you from those threats that I just mentioned, but there was a fundamental trade-off. While you could do point queries, you couldn't do anything else. No rich querying. So we thought, is there a way to imagine something more? Is there a way to imagine encryption in use? Encryption inside the server, but query capabilities on top of that. We thought it was impossible. I think all of us thought this was impossible. But we've partnered with researchers in academia, and we have been excited to announce earlier this year into public preview MongoDB's queryable encryption. We provide rich, expressive queries with a long-term roadmap to continue to iterate, starting with randomized encryption with a quality search. Let me explain what I mean by that. Imagine data coming in with a social security number, for example. It comes into the database, and all the database sees is ciphertext. Let's look at this. Multiple documents in the database, different ciphertext for every social security number, but two of those documents actually have the same social security number. That's what we mean by randomized encryption. The database, however, can do the equality match on this. This is a small but meaningful. For those of you plugged into the encryption world, this is actually a huge step towards a game-changing journey. You'll see us continue to evolve this journey. We started with client-side field-level encryption. We created a cryptographic research group with those pioneers from academia. And we've launched this capability into preview. We've announced that coming soon, we're going to introduce the ability to do range queries, as well as eventually prefix, suffix, and more in the years to come. To go really deep on this topic, I invite you to go to Ken White's talk later today. If you're not familiar with Ken, he's a true world-level expert on encryption. So in summary, with queryable encryption, you can encrypt your sensitive fields. You'll be able to power rich expressive queries, starting with a quality match on randomized encryption. And we're going to do this in the light of day in partnership with academia with open and published algorithms. That's how security is done right. So we've been talking a lot today about these inspiring ideas of building something like Leafy, changing the world. You all have your ideas. Wouldn't it be convenient if all we had to do was greenfield new applications? Unfortunately, for a lot of the people in the room, I'm sure, our reality is one of being stuck in a large quagmire of legacy systems. So much business value is locked in all these systems, and you oftentimes have to work around those challenges or innovate around those challenges or modernize from those traditional systems. It's unavoidable. It's difficult. How do you find that activation energy to really go in and modernize? Where do you even begin? Well, we recognize that there's no silver bullet here. Change is very hard, but we're going to make it easier. We're going to decrease the activation energy necessary. Let's review. You've got these hundreds and thousands of database tables going back decades. It turns out it's actually not that difficult to map these over to a modern MongoDB database schema. Typically, your developers already have the way they conceptualize it in an object. Once you move that data and remap it over to a MongoDB model, it's pretty easy to see how you can start flying from there. Huge benefits. The developer model is great. Developers love that. And the performance is there. Instead of sprawling every query across all these different hits to the disk, you get the power of the document. That's why we were excited to announce into public preview earlier this year the Relational Migrator. We're going to analyze your relational schema. We'll model into a modern MongoDB-oriented data model. We're going to help you move that data and transform it with no downtime. To learn more about the Relational Migrator, Shiv's going to be giving a talk later today. So, the final and third tenet of our developer data platform, global reach and scale. Well, we've certainly lived our own story. Our own idea has gone global. If I look at Atlas, when we started in 2016, we had 4 regions on 1 cloud provider. Today, we have over 100 regions on all 3 cloud providers. We just launched on Google Cloud into Milan and Paris, Madrid, our first launch into Spain. We're the most widely available cloud data service on the planet today. So that's our story. But there's so many incredible stories, so many great ideas being born all the time. To give you a sneak peek into some of these, just in the last couple of months, amazing journeys have started on Atlas. A healthcare simulation company was launched in Norway, giving nurse practitioners the ability to train in a simulated environment. A banking application for teenagers was launched on a mobile phone in Vietnam. Dating was reimagined on a new application launched out of Chicago. A nonprofit in Mexico City made it possible to sell excess foodstuffs from restaurants. And in South Africa, an NGO launched a crowdfunding platform for livestock. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Every month, thousands of new ideas, thousands of new applications are being built on this platform. We could not be more excited to see what you're going to build next. That's what gets me so thrilled. To continue this conversation, we have a great program lined up for you today. I will remind you not to forget that Ask the Experts are available in the Expo Hall. Amazing access to some of the world-level experts in MongoDB. And please, do fill out those short surveys after each session. We love your feedback. It helps us to improve. And finally, we look forward to seeing you all at the happy hour at the end of the event. Okay, folks, have a great event. We're going to have a refresh break now. See you soon. Thank you.